Hi everyone, welcome back to Young and Wiped Up. This is Marcella.
And I'm Gabby.
And thanks for joining us this week for another episode.
If you would like to support us financially, you can head to patreon.com/youngandwifedup. Each Patreon tier includes different exclusive content, and you can unlock past content as well from previous seasons. So if you would like to support us and help us to continue to make content for Christian wives, Christian women, Christian mothers, that's a great way to support us.
Another way you can get plugged into the Young and Wifed Up community is by joining our Facebook group. We do polls, we do call outs for episode ideas. It's a nice space to ask general homemaking questions and to get other women's inputs on things of that nature. And it's also a nice way to see if there's anybody local to you that is like-minded. Maybe if you're having a hard time finding community. Facebook has been a way that both Gabby and I have been able to make lots of friends across the country. Even if there isn't somebody that's personally nearby you, just being able to make friends online is just a huge plus of joining our Facebook group.
Agreed. Cool. So today's subject, we're going to be talking about redeeming unredeemable days. And this is something that I've particularly been meditating a lot on and also just discussing with our friend Jasenia, who lives in Southern California. And Marcella and I miss her so much. So we miss you, Jessie. But she inspired this episode and she even encouraged me to talk about it. And so I hope this is a fun discussion and encourages you guys. So what do I mean by redeeming unredeemable days? So when we started talking about this, because Jessie and I text pretty frequently to kind of keep up with each other, and we always call each other like coworkers, because we
That's
just
funny.
like encourage each other in our homemaking and what we're doing. You know, we tell each other our meal plans, and I don't know, it's just nice to have some accountability and even just like a little coworker, because a lot of us, when we're stay-at-home wives and moms, like a lot of our work is like independent of others. And so it's kind of nice to have somebody that you're sharing inspiration with. And I don't know, it's just been really fun to stay even just connected because we no longer live close by. Just like a fun way to encourage one another and keep cultivating our friendship even far away. But this particular subject, I feel like it just happened naturally when we were discussing it because her and I were just having like really bad days and just like struggling like every day, like kind of disasters. And so one thing that I would like to recommend and as like a compliment to this episode is our episode that we did on resilience. And both of us talk in length about that virtue of resilience and fortitude and being able to press on and press forward and do hard things. And I think that this subject is kind of like continuing on from that subject because this is a particular way that we can exhibit resilience in our everyday life. So more practical. So at any point in our day, things can go wrong. And I'm going to list some examples. And I want you to think about if any of these things are relevant to you, because the majority of these things have been relevant to me. So from running on a few hours of sleep to an unexpected trip to urgent care, from a fussy baby to everybody in the house's attitudes turning sour, from a kitchen disaster to a flooded bathroom, I'm sure all of us could relate to one or all of these scenarios. Marcella, do you relate to any of these things?
Yeah, a few. Just a few.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time when these things happen to us, it usually happens at the most inconvenient time in our day, when we had plans or we had things that we had to do, or we were really counting on that meal working out, or we were really counting on everybody's attitudes being good that day, or we were having house guests, or just anything that could possibly go wrong always happens to go wrong at the worst time. And I think it's just one of those things about God's providence is that sometimes we don't realize that like the Lord can just providentially interrupt our plans and our days and remind us that we are not in control of anything in our lives. So when things go wrong and our plans are disrupted, we often have a choice to make. And sometimes I think we don't even consciously make a choice, but it even just happens naturally where we either throw in the towel, give up on the day, let everything go to crap, and start over tomorrow. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's just what needs to happen. Like, I've had days where it's like everything's gone so wrong that there's just no way that this day can get any better. And I just need to like rest that the Lord provides time for a reason, and that tomorrow morning will come and a new day will come and another chance to have a better day than the day we had today. So, but if we dig deep and do pause and take a moment to be honest with ourselves, there are many days where we can make a different choice if a lot of like plans are disrupted, we're having a bad day. And that is redeeming the day. So picking up the pieces and moving forward. So we want to chat today about practical ways that you can redeem a bad day. And Marcella, I would love for you to chime in because I know that even though sometimes the answer truly is to throw in the towel. And I know that you can relate to that in a lot of ways, like where if things are going wrong or it's just a really hectic day and it's just like, you know what? We're ordering dinner in, the TV is on, and tomorrow is a new day and we will try again, but then there's other days where like we can dig a little deeper and take a moment to reevaluate if things can get better, because sometimes these disasters or disruptions in our day happen not like when we have a few hours left, but when like it's the morning or the middle of the day. And sometimes we don't take time to our advantage, that like there truly is time for things to get better, even if the absolute worst is happening. So, I'd love for you to chime in anything that thing that you have to say. But I have some things written down that I think can help us with practically redeeming a day. So, the first thing is to stop, take a break, and pray. Ask the Lord to give you flexibility and strength to move forward. Another thing is to take a deep breath or a few deep breaths. Even if you have to just like remove yourself from the situation, if that is something you can do depending on what's going on, and taking some deep breaths, because sometimes when chaos is happening, like we cannot think clearly and we just truly need to step away. Um Another thing is to find connection and encouragement. And this is where my friend Jessie comes in, because a lot of the time when we're texting each other as coworkers, and things are going wrong, sometimes we just need to be like, listen, this just happened. Or like, I'll use her as an example, and I know she wouldn't mind because she's the one that asked for this, but she's like, I like didn't sleep at all last night because my infant was up all night and it was so hard and I'm so tired. And so I ended up sleeping in. And I feel like I lost so many hours of the day. And it's like we have an opportunity to encourage one another if we're reaching out for connection and saying, like, listen, this is going on. A disaster has happened. All my plans are now disrupted. Like reaching out for connection to somebody that you trust and love, can just expressing what has gone wrong and asking even just for a prayer, like, please pray for me. Like everything's gone wrong, or I'm really struggling today. I really need some encouragement to keep moving. Like sometimes all you really need is to reach out for connection. Because again, when we're alone and isolated and there's chaos going on, a lot of the time our disasters as homemakers and moms and wives are happening when we're alone or we're alone with the kids. And it's like the last thing we think of sometimes is to reach out for that connection. And sometimes that can make all the difference. And then another thing is to go outside. And I think that can even just psychologically change everybody's attitudes. I know, Marcella, you talk a lot about how eating and going outside are like these beautiful little means of grace that the Lord provides to help straighten out attitudes and regroup. So, do you have any ideas or any thoughts to stopping and reevaluating?
Yeah. Yeah, the going outside thing is definitely helpful, especially for babies who are just having a really tough day, extra fussy, everything is making them upset. Like you could
Yeah.
do no right by them, at all. Like just taking them outside is usually like a really good reset for everybody, even for you too. But usually like if I'm personally having a really chaotic tough moment in my day, it can kind of go a couple of different ways. Like I think my first thought is usually like in 20 minutes things are going to be different and it's
Mm,
usually just like okay, this is hard right now. Like I can get through 20 minutes of this. Like I can get through usually it's not even that much time. Like usually by then you've kind of found a way around whatever the issue is that's going on. Um and you've come up with a different solution or something that's kind of like going to fix people's attitudes or going to help with something went wrong in the house or whatever it is. It's like okay, 20 minutes, we're going to figure out 20 minutes. If it's a little bit more severe than that and kind of it's a bigger issue than that, then it goes kind of to like okay, this was a bad quarter of the day, like I guess for me, my day is kind of split into
mm,
two shifts. I
mm.
have my pre-nap shift and then I have my post-nap shift and then I have like my few minutes in between there when, everybody is sleeping at the same time where I can like have a moment to gather myself for me to either take a break or eat or whatever. But sometimes it's just like, okay, this first half of the day was not good. And like you can be honest about like how bad it went because it probably did go very badly, but that doesn't mean the second half of the day has to be that bad or that you have to carry on with that same kind of like um attitude and just kind of like sulking about everything that happened the first half of the day. And it's definitely hard when then the second half of the day also does not go well at all. And you're like, okay,
You're
well,
like, I was right. I was right. It didn't get better. It got worse.
yeah. Um, yeah, that is where like rubber meets the road. And then I think that's kind of where you have to decide, okay, is this gonna be a falling apart kind of day where things really do have to be delegated out, something an extraordinary happened or something, and
Mhm.
it's just like, nope, the things that are a normal part of the routine, like normalcy is getting kind of thrown out the window at this point. You kind of like have to evaluate if that's going to be one of those days, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it can be due to illness,
Yeah.
major house things going on, like repairs or things of that nature that are just kind of like extraordinary circumstances. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of how like I break it up for myself. And most of the time, like I would say probably 70 to 75% of the issues like currently right in front of my face are things that are fixed within 20 minutes. And then
Mm.
the rest of them are like the bigger,
Yeah,
things.
emergencies or yeah.
Yes, the other percentage is, like, more of the bigger issues, and so trying to remember, like, "Okay, I know that normally in this situation," and most of the time when we're confronted with something that is really, like, that's really hard in that moment, it's probably not the first time we've been confronted with it, and so we
Mm,
can kind of think back, like, "Okay, last time this happened, how long did it take for everybody to settle down, or how long did it take for me to come up with a solution or something?" And most of the time, it's not taking you 3 or 4 hours until you've, like,
right.
completely lost your mind. Sometimes it is that, but I don't think that's, like, what normally is what's going on, and so you can
Yeah.
kind of think back to those, "Okay, there was a light at the end of the tunnel with those situations, there's gonna be that for this too." Um, yeah, and sometimes, yeah, reaching out to others just to have, like, another adult to talk to during that time, like, sometimes I'll, like, video call my mom or video call you,
Mhm.
and just be like, "We're trying to just get to the next nap, and we're just trying to kill time," and, like, they just need to video chat with somebody, or, like, I'll
Yeah.
need to, like, video chat with somebody to have somebody, like, in my ear and, like, kind of it also adds, like, excuse me, like, another layer of accountability because I feel like you're way less likely to, like, freak out and, like, go off the
Yes.
rails if you have
Yes.
somebody that's, like, on the other end of the line with you.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, so, yeah, I feel like it was a little bit easier to, like, figure out handling those situations when we were living with my parents, and even though, like,
'Cause you had more
I
adults to get to delegate things to.
yeah, and there was never a guarantee of who was gonna be home at any time because
Mhm.
everybody was working and busy in and out of the house, but there were definitely more opportunities than I have now of being able to, like, have another adult there to, like, kind of connect and, like, um, help with some of the, like, logistical issues and things like that, so
Okay, so the next thing I wanna talk about after you've stopped and kind of had a moment to breathe and bring yourself back to reality, and Marcella had some great ideas. The next phase that I would say, if you're going to break it down, is a regroup. So reevaluate, regroup. So these are some questions that I would ask myself that I do ask myself when these things happen. And I hope to continue to do this because I am very prone to spiraling if there is a chaotic situation. I do not, you could ask anybody in my life that is close to me. If my plans are derailed, I am now derailed, which is not good. That is not a virtuous thing. And so it is something that I have to constantly fight against. So these questions will help me too. So the first thing is, how can I make this situation better? Second question, should I ask for help? Do we really need to call in reinforcements and delegate? Or, and so somebody needs to be on the phone. I need help, or I need physical, tangible help. There's an emergency, there's a flood, there's an illness that we need to go to the urgent care, that sort of thing. Next, what adjustments can I make to my original plans? And this can be anything from like something so petty, like something that happens to me on a regular basis is like maybe a meal going wrong or something that I'm baking going wrong. And I need to just like, instead of being like frustrated and being like, well, I'm going to throw it all away and I'm done. Is there a way that we can make this work? Can we adjust the plans that we originally had? Is there any way that we can redeem this dinner? Or is there any way that we can reevaluate our plans for the day so that, the kids can make it to nap time and none of us kill each other, that sort of thing. Um, and then also, so a great question that we keep bringing up is how many hours do I have left in this day? Because I think, like I said before, I'm very prone to spiral. Um, Sometimes I can like sabotage myself and my thoughts by being like, my day is now ruined. When something happens like in the morning or in
Mhm.
the afternoon, like even recently, if you were on my lowest homemaker Instagram, I woke up, came downstairs one morning, decided to make us some breakfast, and proceeded to almost lop my entire finger off with my bread knife. And it was like an emergency situation where we ended up needing to go to urgent care. I needed 4 stitches. It was a disaster of disasters. And I was like immediately going to, well, all the plans I had today were ruined. I had so many plans to cook this or bake this or do that. And I was like, I was going to make pasta. I can't make pasta now. Like my hand was like injured, like really injured, and I couldn't move it. And I was like, great. And so then I started thinking like there's no way that I can redeem the situation. Well, thankfully, because I was able to talk to my coworker and my husband, I came home after the whole ordeal. It was only 10 in the morning by the time we got home. I asked myself the question, how many hours do I have left in this day? And I had many. I had many. So I gave myself an hour to sulk and feel sorry for myself and my hurting finger. And then I was like, you know what? I'm now going to pick up the pieces. I'm going to reevaluate my plans for the day. I was going to make homemade pasta, but I can't. Do I have other things that I can make for dinner instead of homemade pasta? And sure enough, I had a box of pasta at the back of my pantry that was ready to go. So the only thing that I needed to modify for my dinner was the pasta part. I was able to make my Alfredo sauce from scratch. I was able to shred some chicken. Everything else was able to go fine that day, except for I had to make adjustments again because of how many hours in the day had left. I was able to be like, no, I can redeem this day. And not only did I end up making dinner, but I ended up making banana chocolate chip muffins and like sending my friend a care package with a bunch of homemade goods in it. And I'm just like, if I had thrown in the towel earlier that day, like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to be fruitful with the rest of my day because a literal emergency happened in the first part of the day, and I could have been like, "That's it. I am now unable to do everything else," but I was able to, like, really, like, have an honest moment with myself. There are so many more hours left in this day. We can redeem it. We can make this day better with just a few adjustments. Do you have anything to add with this regroup section?
Mm, no, I don't think so. You
Cool.
covered it pretty well.
Also, if you have any examples of anything like I just gave right now, that would also be helpful if
Um,
anything comes to mind. Anything recently that happened, small or big. That was kind of like a crazy thing that happened recently, but
hmm, not really that I can not anything, like, so crazy that I can think of. 'Cause it feels like every day little things go wrong all day,
yes,
every day. 'Cause
yes.
there's just constant interruptions and, like,
Mhm.
constant distractions and, like, obviously, like, the kids are not, like, you know, my most important work is, like, my cooking and, like, the cleaning that like, that's obviously not the case. But it's like, those things still have to be done at some point,
Mhm.
like, people do need to eat, people do need to clean clothes, we need to clean dishes to eat off of, and so sometimes even those things, like, being like never being able to ever complete a task it to its like, you know, complete fulfillment, in one sitting can start to drive you a little nuts after a while. And so
Yeah.
like it's it definitely feels like constantly reevaluating, and I think if you're doing it right, that's a trait that you should be getting better
Mhm.
at, which is going with the flow,
Absolutely.
especially if you have kids.
Mhm.
You have no other option but to go with the flow, and I'm not saying you have no structure to your day, but your children are not robots, and neither are you,
Yeah.
and so there's obviously going to be things that are very up and down, yeah, you really just have to have an attitude of, all right, we're cleaning up this huge mess that was just made. All right, we're doing this. And it's like, honestly, just like throwing a fit about it just saves you no work. Like it honestly
Mhm.
just makes more for you when you just have a really awful attitude about every single little thing that goes wrong. Like I feel like it's so much better and more efficient and better for everybody in the house when you can just like do the next thing and just do it and just be okay with doing it and not
Yeah,
freak out on everybody. So anyway.
totally agree. So the last section, once you've stopped, regrouped, now it's time to move forward. So these are the points that I have for that. So, ways that you can move forward with your day after you've asked yourself the honest questions is one, making a new plan for either the next few minutes or the next hour or for the rest of the day. And I think I really like what Marcella's points have been of like, she breaks up her days kind of in sections. And it's like, okay, so this is how this time went. How am I going to approach the next section of my day? Do I need to make adjustments? Do I need to make changes? What changes am I now going to implement so that we can not just get through the day, but actually still be fruitful with the day and actually be productive and cultivate joyful attitudes in the people of the house. Next is starting with only what is necessary, like what's right in front of you then and there, is also a
Mhm.
great way because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I think we as homemakers can become overly ambitious with our
Mhm.
days where we're like, okay, I'm going to do all this in my day. And then if something goes wrong, then it's like, great, like nothing that I wanted to accomplish was accomplished.
Mhm.
But if, like Marcella said, people were fed and people were cleaned, is like bare minimum what is necessary, what is in front of you. Like, do people need to be fed? Okay, everything needs to stop and that needs to happen before anything else can move forward. Do people need to take naps? Do we need to take an early nap today? Like, sometimes you just need to make a decision for right then and there, and then you can go back to regrouping and planning the rest of your day. If sometimes I think we can get overwhelmed because we can become overly ambitious with our day, that if we aren't getting our tasks done, that then we like think like this day was a sham or this day was a failure. But if things like disruptions, and a lot of the time if you have children, like Marcella said, the disruptions are happy disruptions. They're kids that need attention or they need your love, they need help with things, or they make messes. Like things like that happen so often where it's like you have to deal with that primarily first a lot of the time. And then anything extra, the ambitious part of our day, sometimes we just need to be okay with being like, you know what, I was going to deep clean my closet today, but that is not going to happen today. And I can try again tomorrow. And if it didn't happen tomorrow, we're going to try it again the next day. And
Mhm.
it's like you can still, I think being ambitious for your day can be a good thing, but it becomes a bad thing if that is what is making us overwhelmed and spiraling because we're so unrealistic with
Yeah,
our
I was gonna say you should be able to make a, depending on what phase of life that you're in, a somewhat varied, detailed plan of your day, but you also have to be willing to throw it out the window
yeah,
if you
like a
need to.
tier list almost of like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
these
Like
are
if
the
there is,
necessities.
yes. If I only have time for one thing, and you know
Mhm,
what? A lot of the time, especially if you have only little kids who have, it's very high physically needs demanding of you. Um, Most of the time, it is only going to be the one thing for probably a long time.
mhm.
And you may have like an anomaly day where you can get 5 things done and you're like, "Yes." But it's like, it's okay if that's not every single day where you can get
Yeah,
all of these extra
mhm.
tasks tasks done. Yeah.
Yeah. Even recently, last week I was really having a hard week physically, and I like was telling my husband like, "Oh man, like I had so many plans for the day and I just feel overwhelmed." And he was like, and I was like, "But the most important thing is I want to stick to the meal plan this week even though we had a hard day. I already bought all the groceries for it and I think I only have the physical capacity to do dinner." And my husband said, "Okay, then that's all you're doing. You're doing dinner and everything else I'm taking care of." And like that's like we've had to make dealing with like my chronic pain, like we every day is so different, and it can
Mhm.
be easy for me to be frustrated with myself because I so long for rhythm and normalcy that like when it's not happening for a long time, like I just get discouraged. Like I just do. I get
Mhm.
discouraged.
Yeah.
And so it's like being able to talk, even just talk it through with somebody of like, this is what I have to do today. And it's like, okay, then you only do that thing and you do it to the best of your ability. And everything else you may need to delegate for that day or a few days or even long term if it's like a chronic issue that's happening or like
Mhm.
you're in a survival situation with emergencies, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, the next point for moving forward again is bringing in reinforcements if needed. So if that happens and you do need extra hands, extra help, like that may be the time that you bring in reinforcements and you delegate, or you need somebody to help just be another adult in the room with the kids, like just anything to help with some of these situations. And then lastly, I think this can do so much good in our mental space when disruptions are happening in our life is changing our mindset to consider the Lord's providence in those disruptions and disasters that like I think about all the time, like even when that last week when we were talking about your situation traveling to Vegas, God providentially like stopped you from traveling to Vegas. And I know that we should be careful not to be superstitious because I think we can so easily end up being like, oh, like you were protected from some danger, or whatever.
Mhm.
But like God does like decree all things and he knows that these things needed to happen, even though we had our plans for your trip. Like in that situation, like God had different plans for your
Mhm.
trip. And it's like if we take even just small things that happen in our day and be like, this is what the Lord chose for my day. How am I going to respond to what the Lord chose for my day? I make my plans, but the Lord directs my steps. So it's like, okay, it's good to plan. It's good to have, rhythms and have like things set for you to be productive or for you to be fruitful in your home. But we need to hold our plans so loosely in our
Mhm.
hands because the Lord can change anything on a whim in our day. And how we perceive these disruptions can really help us to not spiral or become overwhelmed or throw in the towel, like we were saying earlier. Um, Anything you want to add to that?
Hmm. No, I don't think so.
Well, can you read us that scripture verse and we can wrap it up?
Yeah, so this is Lamentations 3:22 through 23. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness.
A freaking men. There is always tomorrow. His mercies are new every morning. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. We hope you were encouraged. We'd love to discuss these topics and this subject in our Facebook group, on our Patreon, and on our Instagram pages. And we hope to see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.